welcome to Chicago Reacts. My name is Lauren, and today I am finishing up Control, the Bricky review, the worst 8 out of 10 game. I love it. This is several days after I filmed part 1, but you're all getting it, I think, the next day. So that's where we're at with that. I enjoyed part 1. I'm looking forward to finishing up this video. If in the future you want me to do these longer videos in one video myself, let me know. The main reason that I didn't this time, well, there's 2 reasons. One, his video is over an hour long, and mine always exceed that by a lot. And then 2, I've just been incredibly busy recently, and wanted to make sure that I was getting enough stuff filmed in general, on top of various rehearsals and things of that nature. So things were just a little bit, my time was a little bit crunched. So that's where I was at. That's why I did this in 2. But again, if you want me to do these in one video in the future, let me know. And we'll see. But for now, let's get back into the world of the oldest house.
A dump is a place for lost things. Things that have been thrown away.
Were you a dump?
Did you ever feel that way when you were growing up, Jesse?
Sam Lake, you hack. What we do learn
It is
that
kind
the
of an
slide
obvious way to
projector
go.
And the last remaining slide has been moved to dimensional research through a fancy thing called the ashtray maze.
Oh.
Now, this maze is entirely to be utilized by the director and is unsolvable unless you have bound this cigar and ashtray to yourself. So,
which Jesse
who else
doesn't
to
find.
get through this
Okay.
than the man of the house himself, Ati the janitor. The mission is called Finish Tango for a reason. You follow the visions of Ati to a restricted area maintenance that, by golly, sure looks like Ash Lake, doesn't it? But before you meet your lovely boss, you need to go to a combat trial, and this is the perfect time to discuss the combat of
Okay,
Control
great, because I know
in
that
the
we've been
depth
waiting.
I've been wanting to. By this time,
waiting
you should
for
have all your
combat.
abilities, and that does include the ability to fly or levitate, but it's basically fly. I mean, look at this, it's so cool. So, Control hand.
And again, is that like, he didn't really talk too much about that, but is that like the telekinesis thing allowing you to do that, or is that like another ability you just gain because you like bind yet another item to you?
Handles like a dream. Jessie moves with such a fluidity, and the abilities she has all work perfectly, especially when combined with the environment. In fact,
Cool.
I may go so far as to say that this is the best Star Wars Jedi simulator game on the market. You have your blaster with all of its different kinds of firing modes. Then you have force throw, force shield, Jedi mind control, flying, dash, and slam. This is just
Everything
Jedi
but a
simulator,
lightsaber.
and it fucks. What doesn't fuck is how Control does its enemies. It took me a really long time to figure out the issue with this game's combat, and it's this. The game wants you to be a power fantasy, but its enemies stop you from becoming one. Control needed to lean more into the power fantasy aspect of the title. Right now, there is 0 reason for you to take cover. There's never a reason to do so, except basically against one single enemy, the guy with the big minigun. You are always moving, always attacking, always shooting, and especially at the end of the game when you have good mods, lots of energy, and crazy new abilities, you truly are the power fantasy character. However, the enemies are only spawned in, often in groups of 4 to 8.
Oh, yeah, that could be frustrating. I can see where that would get annoying and kind of boring and repetitive.
There's some variety. You have the kamikaze enemies, ones that fly around and throw things at you, snipers, regular soldiers, heavies, and more. But in my time, the most annoying of these enemies were the ones that dodged my attacks. Certain
How dare
enemies,
they?
when you throw something at them, will dodge almost perfectly the first time, but not the second time. So they aren't really hard to deal with, but they're annoying. And it rids you of a bit of that power fantasy because you aren't able to do anything about it. Close range gunfire enemies are all hit scans, so there's no real dodging. And if you get too close, they actually kind of shred you. But in order to regain health pickups, you need to damage enemies so they spill them out and then run to it to heal up. So the game rewards you for being up close and aggressive, but also punishes you simultaneously because the enemies get that much stronger. Are you seeing the issue here?
Yeah, that's kind of a catch-22 sort of. I can see that would be annoying in a game, and I would be really, really terrible at that part of it. So I think I would give up Again, I would have given up a long time ago in this game probably, but that's just cuz. That's just cuz. If I'm not good at something immediately, I usually stop. That's a lie. I don't. But you know, if I'm not having fun cuz I'm not figuring it out, then I stop.
Here, it rewards both extremely aggressive play in healing and damage, and everything pushes you to this power fantasy, but then when enemies automatically dodge attacks, are in low quantities, and have hit scan guns, it pushes you away from fully enjoying it. There's too much that stops you from embracing that power. I think if you wanted to really perfect this kind of game,
how would you fix it,
need
Ricky?
to drop enemy strength, increase Jesse's abilities, and double the enemy count. Enemy guns do less damage. Enemies don't auto dodge. And you need to have that stupid rock spinny guy not do what he does.
That
stop
stupid
existing.
rock
Then
spinny
you need to
thing.
let Jesse go crazier. Have her mind control enemies faster. Having her throw rock objects at multiple enemies, almost like a target lock where you get to pick a few of them. And then just double the amount of enemies thrown at you. Because right now, I feel like I'm told, yeah, you know, go to town, fuck them up, you're basically magic. But don't get too close. But you have to get too close to them to get healing, or else they'll kill you in half a second, so don't get too close, but you have to get close. It's so unfortunate, too, because the gameplay is, it's so good. It's such a buttery smooth dream, and all it needs is to focus and be adjusted a little bit, and bam, it would be so much better. But
I mean, I don't know. I think you should be able to decide, like in your difficulty settings, maybe, how strong the enemies are. Not like how many of them are, but like, you know, it might be, maybe you do want them to be a little stronger. It feels a little bit better when you destroy them. I don't want it to feel like shredding through paper. Like, that can be fun, but like, I think I want it to feel more equitable, but also, you know, I don't know. If you have all of those abilities, I don't want to nerf the enemies, essentially. Just giving them sheer hordes might also stress me out. So, I don't know. Maybe depending on the mode you're playing on.
at the moment, especially the jukebox challenge missions, you feel like you're some god that needs to one-shot everything, or else it one-shots you. It's just high-level Warframe gameplay. The reason I harp on this so much right now is because you have a wave defense section right before heading to nowhere.
Like in Silent Hill 2, sound like you hack.
And it's where I felt the gameplay issues the most. After this combat, you get a very long lift section that plays the Finnish tango song sung by Ati. This here is a great moment of relaxation, which I mentioned earlier in the video is important after large explosive moments. It's a minute or so long, but it's a great breakup from what's been happening. Plus, the song slaps because it's sung by Ati.
Yeah, that'll do it.
I need to take a moment to talk.
I mean, it's not the tango dancing that Bricky was doing didn't quite match up with the music, but it was close.
About Ati. All right. He has about 5 total minutes of dialogue, and he's easily one of the most compelling characters in the game. It clearly starts off as a fun little switch where he's a janitor during a massive crisis, and if you're a bit keen in the opening of the game, he reads your inner monologue and continues to do so throughout the game. Now, for my non-Finnish viewers, and myself, Ati is the Finnish sea god, king of waves and other kind of Poseidon-ish like titles. Janitor in Finnish has a literal translation to meaning man of the house. This being the oldest house, the conclusion is that Ati is a sort of dimensional groundskeeper. He's seen in every part of the oldest house, especially areas that actual janitors would definitely not be allowed to go to. Staff comment on his odd demeanor, but
Got your message. Yeah, someone in the sector is asking about Dottie. Just tell him you'll handle it and leave it at that. Under no circumstances should any personnel intervene with his day-to-day routine. Damn. I told you everything I know about him, so you could better deal with his odd habits, but yes, it's still very much a classified matter. Also, I saw your report about the quarry worker wandered into the Foundation. Detaining him was the right move. We'll figure out what he knows before his next steps. P.S. If you haven't noticed something's up between Trench and Darling, I know it's not your strong suit, but stay out of it. Okay. okay, shade, first of all, but ooh, yeah, just let him do his thing, okay? Don't bother him. Don't bother. Also, you know what? You should never piss off the janitors, though. BT dubs. You should definitely be tremendous to the janitors. They do a very important work. And if they don't do their work, because you piss them off, then that's on you. That getting nasty quick. Be nice to the janitors, folks.
Trench explicitly says, don't bother him, let him do his work. I guess that's just what's so lovely and endearing, is that this silly old Finnish janitor man is actually a paranatural entity that maintains the oldest house, and he really needs an assistant, you, because the problem is a bit big now, and he wants to go on vacation.
Vacation?
Right.
Let him take a break.
Yes. No one's gonna cancel my holiday or seat's gonna rattle.
It's so fun to think that this world-ending event is Tuesday for Ati, and he just really wants that vacation. And
He
and gets
deserves it.
Look, once you realize that, everything clicks.
good.
Going to the
Look how happy he
interview
was.
is doing the gun roulette to make you the director, which is why you got the job, so on and so on. He's a gem and a fantastic addition, giving us some of the most interesting moments in the game.
Did you miss me? Did you have piss in your sock?
No?
Yes. No. Bark don't make a wound. You did good. Take my cassette player. You can borrow it. The song is a present from my friends to you. It will get you through the maze so you can do your job.
Now, people who are familiar with Control will know for a
friends
fact that
on
this
the
next
other
part is the
side.
highlight of the game. Navigating
Okay.
the ashtray maze, utilizing Adi's cassette player, of course, has the Remedy song special, which is Take Control by the old gods of Asgard. Not only
Okay,
is it
so
the
that's something somebody wanted me to look at, by the way. Someone did want me to look at that eventually. I'm glad I didn't yet. But somebody requested or somebody suggested, it wasn't really a request, they just said I should do it. So that's something that it's a video I have saved to look at for later.
part of the game by a country mile, but it's also where that power fantasy actually comes into play.
Ooh,
the
fun.
music is blaring, the area looks amazing, it's a total
this is
trip, and
trippy.
because of that, it's the one time that I think it all just comes together
Okay.
perfectly. It's a shame I was so overpowered I couldn't listen to most of the song.
Well, you know, if I'm gonna get freaking claimed on this one, but whatever. Ricky, why would you do this to me? So if you're watching this part, then I didn't get claimed. Is he gonna play the whole song? I wanna let's watch the song on my own. Ooh, doors. Creepy. Oh, and that's a really cool dynamic though. Like if the enemies can come out of any door, like you're surrounded. That's really cool if they can do that.
Now, that badass section is over, and you get to enter Dimensional Research, obviously the place where all the important stuff goes on, and a lot of the regular folk are not allowed to be. Dr. Darling, in particular, is very
buddy.
protective of this place.
Do not touch my set!
How very Moliere of him, you know?
They opened up a portal from the slideshow projector and entered the dimension that was the only one left, the same dimension that Jesse and Dylan entered way back when. After doing so, they brought back another paranatural entity. This they called Hadron, and it was a resonance-based being from this dimension. It's in this gigantic form you see
like a
here.
hedgehog
Now, they
glider.
don't
Nice.
explain this part super
Not
well. They make you go through a lot of digging with between all the audio logs and all of the papers on there to eventually kind of piece it together. So I'm going to paraphrase this pretty
Good, thank
heavily.
you. Please do
Hedron
that.
is a resonance-based being, and Polaris inside Jesse's head is simply a fragment of Hedron. Polaris was pulled to this place, of course, because Hedron is it for the most part. However, it is a resonance being, not a hindsight being. So when you rip off the gigantic HRA, which reminds you stands for Hedron Resonance Amplifier, you have now ripped off its only protective shielding against the hiss, and then it immediately attacks it and kills it. It's a strange section because you spend all this time getting to the fancy Hedron being out of the slideshow, only for you to meet it for half a second and it to die. This
because
allows
you kill
the
it.
hiss to infect Jesse and immediately destroy the entire world. Roll credits.
That's fun. You can almost hear. You want this? Wow. Okay, and all this weird stuff. Baby. Builders. You can almost hear something. The fingers through the surface to the wet. It's been new to you. This is really cool. I like this. You can almost hear our words, but you forget. This happens more and more now. Ooh.
Of course, they do the credit fake out because you know.
Sam Lake, you fucking hack.
No,
The credit fake out has fully gotten me before, but it got me in Bocchi the Rock. Like in Bocchi the Rock, they did a credit fake out, and I was like, "Wait, what?" And I had to. We did have to double check. I was like, "Nope, we're good. We're good."
This next section is Jesse being a 9-to-5 worker for the Bureau. This is all clearly inside of her head, and it's what the hiss is preying on, which is a great time to talk about Jesse. Jesse is a bit of a difficult character to figure out. On one hand, she's very flat one-note character, and on the other hand, she has a lot of interesting personal motivations underneath all of it, and a bit more character than would appear. We do have a little bit of the Schrodinger's voice acting issue here, much like with Alan Wake. Jesse comes off as very flat basically throughout the entire game. However, that is part of her character. There's a whole thing about the need for control and what she's trying to do here. This kind of goes into the idea that she is the best director for the job. The prior directors, being Northmore and Trench, both had major issues that led to their demise. Northmore was a power-hungry asshole who bound himself to every object he could and eventually went nuclear, so they encased him in a giant sarcophagus to power the Bureau. I kind of glossed over that part.
Yeah, you kind of didn't mention. He says I glossed over that part. You didn't mention it until this very second. I had no idea. That's wild.
That's pretty cool.
I suppose at the end of the day, a director's most basic duty is to keep the lights on.
Trench was so obsessed with control and things flying out of hand that it caused him to have massive issues of paranoia when it came to running the Bureau itself, and ultimately, the hiss preyed on that. Jessie is a bit of the every woman. She jokes about being a janitor assistant already way back in the beginning of the game, and despite going to the place that kidnapped her younger brother and spied on her for her entire life, she is relatively nice to everyone there. She's a stone cold
that's a little wild.
For the most part, that's how she's had to live her life. But that really goes against a lot of the things she says.
The pill I'm about to make with these samples will make the lower level perfectly safe to traverse.
I feel like I should ask to see her credentials.
You're so funny, Jesse. Ha 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 ha. Jump off a bridge.
I don't have a word for it yet, but I feel like this is just forspoken dialogue.
Did I just do that?
Basically, shitty quips that come off as really annoying. Jessie has a bit too many of these quips for her character. It's very strange how she can go from this dark, dour person and then make these kind of Marvel jokes in her head.
You know, it does kind of give Miles Upshur in Outlast, though. I mean, like, he's kind of grumbly when he talks, but then, like, he's so sassy in his notebook.
Randomly, or even during mid-combat. It also doesn't help that she has that, like, always chewing gum facial expression to go along with all of these. Right here, when the hiss takes control of Jessie, is where we get the best window into her character throughout the entire game. You're forced into this never-ending loop of doing menial tasks for the Bureau, basically as just a coffee woman, and everyone is berating you the entire time. The 9-to-5 job, while being quite the nightmare in its own right, is more represented as an...
I wouldn't know. I've literally never had a 9-to-5. Like, ever in my life. The closest I've come is when I was interning at this production studio in Baltimore. But I don't think it was 9 to 5. I was there from like, I don't even remember what my hours were, but I don't know. I had to spend some time doing like receptionist stuff. Like I had to spend my hour a shift or whatever at the front desk. But I was not the only one who had to do that. Like that particular duty was cycled through a lot of people, not just the interns. And like I spent more time hanging out with, you know, the people who were doing the work and, you know, doing a lot of, I did some like Photoshop and, you know, market research, by which they meant like, look at all these documentaries that have come out and like start making lists of all the documentaries that are coming out, and maybe we'll make a documentary. Like, it was fun, you know? It's like I'm hanging out. So that wasn't even really a 9 to 5. Like I wasn't there from 9 to 5. I helped film a couple commercials for them. Had to do a lot of shopping for craft services. But that's like as close to an office job as I've ever had. And I'm working with like real directors, you know, like producers, real people who worked on like Veep and House of Cards and stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay. I've heard that the 9 to 5 kind of sucks. Granted, maybe the benefits make it worth it. Because I have never worked a 9 to 5. I've just worked random like serving shifts and in like some production work stuff. And now this, of course. But I don't know. Do the benefits make it worth it?
Avenue to have Jesse's underlying fears be expressed. This is one of the largest characterizations we get out of her throughout the entire game, but that does still create a bit of an issue when it contrasts with her quippy dialogue. It's also where you discover a lot of the same issues with Trench. This is a bit of a loop here, and in order to break it, you need to bring Mail to Trench a few times and kind of take over his position in a way. But doing this, Trench has a seriously long monologue that is very easily missed if you just talk to him too soon. You learn what happened is that when Darling, Trench, and the rest all went into the alternate dimension and brought back Hedron, Trench was infected by the hiss. This played on his excessive paranoia, his fear of running the Bureau, and what it has done to both himself and his family. So, by being so paranoid, the hiss got to him and made him distrust everyone, including Dr. Darling, and he went to go get the slide projector, steal it, and open up a portal to let the hiss out. This is what happened right before Jesse arrived to the FBC, and Trench, most likely realizing what he just did, ended his own life. So now it's Jesse's turn to try and push the hiss out of her mind, and she does so in a very great way.
Oh.
Really? Okay.
Dr. Darling is long gone now, turned into some god as far as we're concerned. He entered the resonance-based being or something.
Yay!
And
He's
really
a rock star.
Hey, Matthew Preda. Good gains, dude. It's not important. He's gone for now. It doesn't really matter. But in Jesse's mind, he is absolutely rooting for her from another dimension.
Is he like naked with just the piano on him there?
In Jesse's mind, he is
No, I think I for a second I was like, wait, is all he wearing the piano?
absolutely rooting for her from another dimension personally in what
for-
might be the best part of the entire video game outside of the ashtray maze.
That's 'cause
Dr.
you like him.
Darling, my beloved. I originally wanted to put myself in the video, but apparently the Dynamite song is YouTube copywritten.
No.
What the hell?
But the other one wasn't?
Vest.
Life is pain!
I'm sorry, dude. That's too bad. The vest kind of slaps. All right. So maybe okay, so like I said earlier, I don't know. I might have that Gods of Asgard song in this video. It might not be in there. It depends on if it's YouTube copywritten or not.
So Jessie, realizing she's dynamite, is able to use this Polaris Hedron in her head to force out the hiss through the power of will. This part's a little weird. She's able to get the hiss out of her head because Hedron is now like fully in her head because Hedron is dead, but she just kind of like girl bosses her way back to sanity. I'm not really kidding here much either. Like, obviously Polaris / Hedron is important here, but she does just kind of will herself to get better. Now, it's—
You know what? Sure, why not? You know what? They were using other Norse mythology in this, okay? Like, there's quite a few moments in Norse mythology where the gods just kind of will stuff. They will themselves to not be dead anymore, or like they will people into existence. I don't know. Like, Norse mythology is kind of wild, but it happens. People just will themselves to do stuff in that a lot. So I think that's okay, considering how much other will-based stuff and other considering how much other Norse influence is here. I can get behind that. I can get behind it.
It's a Remedy game, so it's probably a bit more metaphorical. Of course, you know, the character and everything like that, but logistically, it's a little weird because it just doesn't make much sense. But regardless, you do it, you push the hiss out, and now your job is to go find the slide projector that Trench opened up, get in there, and shut its ass down and go save Dylan. The final ending section of Control is apparently supposed to be a lot harder than I experienced. I had some of the most busted mods on my weapons and kind of just slaughtered everything through there. I was a blue Powerade girl in a red Gatorade dimension.
Okay.
Nothing really stood a chance. You fight through enemy upon enemy into various floating platforms in this really cool looking boss arena. All the time, Dylan and the Hiss are screaming out, doing their classic "you are a worm through time" orange peel. Then after this extended combat encounter, you see Dylan up there, you go to him, you grab him, you bada bing, bada boom, and here's our ending.
You've taken your boss! Your boss! You!
Dylan's in a coma. I don't know if there's anything of him left in there. If he'll ever find his way back.
So all of that was
The
for
portal's been
nothing,
closed.
basically?
But the hiss is still in the oldest house. And the lockdown can't be lifted as long as any trace of it remains. I'm working on a solution with my management team, but there is still a long road ahead. I'm the director of the Federal Bureau of Control. We're in this together. You and I.
Me?
What a load of shit! Sam,
Yeah.
like, you hack!
What?
You like Stephen King too much? What is with your dog shit endings? I was genuinely dumbfounded when I finished this game at how abruptly it just ends. You know, there's this really cool thing called the falling action. You know,
The
once you
denouement.
the story, you have this little bit of falling action, right? And it happens, you know, it kind of smooths out the ending of your game or your movie or your book, and then, you know, and then you end it. We hit climax, and then we just stopped. Sam Lake, you busted and immediately hopped in the Uber. She's still panting, my guy. You didn't even bother to get her a towel.
Gross.
It's like the poorly drawn Game of Thrones horse, except it's not even that way. It's a beautiful horse all the way across, and then you just cut its nose off. You don't get to talk to Dylan. He's not better now. He's just in a coma. There's still a hiss issue because you gotta do those side missions after the game is over, and it just ends. Now, when I yelled about this game on stream and I freaked myself out, a lot of people were saying, oh, well, yeah, it's not good, but their budget was obviously really low. They probably ran out of time. And I'm like, I get what you're saying. I get that's what you think, but that makes zero sense. Video games are not linear creations. You don't just go chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 9. Oh my God, it's releasing in only 3 weeks. Chapter 10. When games have issues with budget and time, it's not in a linear progress where the last stages of the thing is broken down and suffers issues. Sometimes this happens, but in different ways. Warhammer Rogue Trader is the game that, while I do enjoy, is plagued by massive bug issues and the like in the second half of the game. But you gave me a mostly pretty great experience all the way across, and then you just tripped at the finish line and face planted. I
that's a bummer.
Wish I could find out why in the world this was the decision. Why did it end this way? Because it just doesn't make any sense and it's driving me crazy.
Maybe it was supposed to have like a different sequel or something, like more than DLCs, or maybe it was supposed to have something like it was supposed to be I don't know, like in the middle or a mid-pull, something like that, where but then the sequel never came to fruition or something.
I feel like I'm being corrupted by the hiss. Even Alan Wake 1, that I also think had a pretty mediocre ending, at least gave us a falling action after the climax. It didn't bust and then log into Destiny 2. So yeah, I desperately am hoping for a behind the scenes with this ending. It doesn't make any sense because despite my issues with the game and what I've harped on before, the experience overall is still fleshed out for the entire game. There wasn't a section of Control where I felt the budget was lacking outside of some difficult technical optimizations and a few times where I crashed. I have issues with decision making, with mechanics, parts like that, but none of it felt unfinished. It just boggles my mind. And it's a really sad thing to see for a game that was so enjoyable. Now, there are 2 DLCs that the game came out with as well. The Foundation and AWE. I had originally assumed that this would make a major difference, as most of my viewers who were watching the game and hearing me complain at nausea about the ending said that the Foundation will make it feel a lot better. So the Foundation is an additional piece of content, about 3 to 4 hours long, that has you going into one of these interesting catacombs to repair something called the Nail. It's basically a major ley line pillar that allows all the various dimensions from folding in on each other. Right now, the Nail has been blown to shit.
Oh, that sucks.
The astral plane and the board's dimension is seeping into yours. And, you know, that's not great. For the most part, there isn't anything particularly special about this DLC in terms of gameplay. You get a funny little power that you can use for this particular section, and they introduce you to a new enemy, which is just a melee version of the flying guys that can dodge, so they're very easy to deal with.
Love
but
that.
the story is somewhat decent, and the level design in the astral plane is also kind of cool. Marshall came down here and is talking to you through the hotline, which clearly means she's dead, or sometimes close to it. Noticing the hiss was entering this area, having it take over the Nail would be pretty bad news for everyone involved. So Marshall took a bunch of C4 and blew it up because you can't take over a pile of rubble. In between all of this, you
can,
have
but
the
what would
board
be the point?
angrily discussing their former member called the Former, who you actually fought in a side mission in the base game. This is a neat bit of world building, as there are obviously entities that are not part of the board, and so there can be a little back and forth with that whole thing. But unfortunately, the DLC falls flat because it feels mainly like a sequel setup. You learn a bit more about the board, you learn a bit more about this Former and how these ley lines work, and Jesse comes to the conclusion that maybe I should follow my own path and my own heart instead of listening to these giant paranatural entities that are most likely megalomaniacs. But that's basically how this DLC ends. You fix the Nail, you decide that you're going to take your own path, and it's over. The saving grace is the fact that you get a hiss version of Marshall that's a boss fight at the end, which is the best boss fight Remedy has done so far. This is when I realized that Control needed to be a power fantasy game. And this fight was just honestly excellent. Marshall reminded me a lot of the Lazarevich fight from Uncharted 2, throwing giant swaths of grenades at you, but for the most part, she had a decent amount of health, moved in a proper way, and had a lot of enemies and other ads to deal with, while you yourself got a bunch of friends to help you out. It was very fun. It's the best boss fight that I've played so far in all the Alan Wakes besides 2 and Control. Finally,
we're getting to Control.
we have AW.
We're gonna get to
Now, the Foundation is fine. It's not as good as the base game, and it's mainly a lot of sequel bait, but it is worth playing. The AWE DLC is probably the thing you're looking for if you're watching this along with all the other Alan Wake games. The AWE DLC, or the Alan Wake expansion, or the Alan Wake Everywhere DLC, is a fun little foray into the original game with Jesse. Now, this may have been a crazy thing to see back in 2019 when this came out, but clearly I was already informed that this was part of the Remedy verse. So I was generally able to piece together all of the major reveals going on in this expansion. If Alan Wake exists in the same universe as Control, then that means things like objects of power, para-utilitarianism, altered world events, all
so
these
things like the clicker then could be object of power. It would be interesting to see somebody who, like Jesse, who's got all these objects of power, though, interacting with more stuff in the Alan Wake universe. Like, apparently you do that here. But, you know, just to see Alan be struggling, be on the struggle bus with his flashlight. And then Jesse comes in and just starts like telekinesing things around. That would be very funny.
things also exist. Because of this, we can synthesize a couple of theories. Cauldron Lake itself could be an object of power, Alan Wake could be a para-utilitarian person, and activate it in a way. The Bright Falls event is in fact referred to as an altered world event, and even Sarah, the cop, her dad was an ex-Bureau agent. Now, if we know anything about Alan Wake, he's a writer.
My name is Alan Wake, and I'm a writer.
And the ability to shape reality through the pages he writes is very much in line with the weird stuff we've learned from Control. It creates a situation where all of the weird wackiness of the first game actually is defined. And what's really special about this is that it doesn't necessarily break the game's immersion. There's a genuine fear that by explaining the supernatural nature of the Bright Falls event, you take away from it. Sam Lake said so himself when Sam Lake quoted his favorite person ever, Stephen King.
Stephen King once wrote that nightmares exist outside of logic, and there's little fun to be had.
The shade at Sam Lake and Stephen King is so good.
To the poetry of fear.
So it is genuinely interesting to see them explain a lot of it away, but not entirely, and still leave a decent amount of intrigue. Alan constantly writes about trying to escape from the dark place. We even get a little Mr. Scratch in there, pretending to be Thomas Zane, voiced by the live-action version of Alan Wake, hilariously enough. And for the most part, the entire expansion is just huge fan service towards the first Alan Wake game. Hell, even the main boss is a crazy deformed Dr. Hartman, which you finally get to put in the dirt.
Ah,
nice. Incredibly annoying and kind of shit encounters where you have to light up a room like 5 times. There are a lot of fun reveals in this expansion, but I think it's been soured a little bit just because I already knew that this was part of the Remedyverse. I can see someone who was a big fan of Alan Wake play this expansion back in 2019 or 2020, whenever this came.
But like, would you want to though? Like, if you didn't kind of already know, like, I don't know. I feel like it wouldn't necessarily follow that you would play this game just because you were a fan of Alan Wake. And like, I mean, you might end up playing it and then get surprised. But like, would you? Like, would you play Control, be interested enough in the story and everything to get the DLCs and keep playing them and then suddenly find out that Alan Wake's involved? I don't know. I feel like you would have to know. I mean, maybe not. Maybe if you were just like, I like Remedy games and I'm curious to see what this game is, maybe I can see that. But I don't know. I feel like knowing that it's in the same world would help. Not knowing that you were going to go into the Alan Wake game as Jesse would be, like, essentially, or whatever he's saying here. Not knowing that, maybe. Maybe that's what he's saying. Maybe I fully misunderstood what he just said and I've just talked about it for like 25 minutes.
Came out and just be absolutely mind blown, not just because of how it relates to the Bright Falls AWE, but also because it ends with a major sequel tease for Alan Wake 2. Overall, the AWE expansion is really fun as someone who likes the first Alan Wake game, despite my 6 out of 10 rating, but it's not something that I think is on its own particularly great. The gameplay is pretty bad. The Hartman fight is also not particularly good. And you spend the entire time having to talk to the Redditor Langston, which I just don't care for. The Foundation is the much better expansion, and even that is a little bit mid, especially because most of these story beats feel like they're setting up the sequel. God, this is so hot in the sweater vest.
It looks itchy
is
too.
The overall story of Control. My title for this video is the worst 8 out of 10 I've ever played. You'll notice that it has a much different tone compared to Alan Wake, the best 6 out of 10 I've ever played. This is a very hard thing to describe because it's much more of a feeling than it is anything else. I was speaking with someone about how fans of Alan Wake talk about the game. They tend to exclaim, "I love Alan Wake. It's so mid," with a full chest and pure excitement. It is almost this feeling of reveling in the fact that it's not good, yet you love it. Control gives me the opposite feeling. Control makes me say, oh, this game is so great, but God, I wish some things were different. When I gave Alan Wake 1 a review, in my chest, in my mind, I was saying, ooh, I love this game a lot, but it's really not good, so I can't give it more than a 6. When I think about Control, I say, oof, it's got some real problems, but it's so solid, and I can't give it less than an 8. Because here's the final truth, and it's something that I've noticed time and time again. People will take shit and unique over decent and corporate any day of the week, or at least in terms of how they talk about the product. Completely fine but uninspired is half of the Marvel catalog, yet they make insane amounts of money. But I don't go to bed thinking about Marvel movies. Control is a game that is so unabashedly following a particular concept. It has an art direction that is unmatched. It has a story that is, while wacky and weird and has problems of its own, is fascinating. The game is the worst 8 out of 10 I've played because it falls apart and cracks at every possible seam at some point or another, but it is so unique, so incredibly one of a kind that I cannot possibly, in good conscience, lower the score below an 8. There is too much passion behind this. Hell, even after everything, one of the Remedy developers went out to work on their own time on a mod to continue support for Control.
That's really
It's a mod I highly recommend downloading. It adds native HDR, upgrades the DLSS, gives ultra-wide support, couple other fixes. Control has my glowing recommendations across the board. This game will not be for everyone, but it's still a game that deserves to be played.
I mean, it certainly sounded interesting the whole time you talked about it.
I have ever played, and I mean that with nothing but respect and glowing
affectionate. The worst 8 out of 10 I've ever played. Affectionate.
Shawshank Redemption. That's the name of the movie I was thinking of earlier. Not important, but that was it.
Sam Lake, thank you everyone so much
Drink
for watching.
every time he
I
says
really
Sam Lake,
appreciate
you
it.
hack.
Get some merch. There's a Brickle tee. It's also in hoodie form. Buy that. There's a My
It is
Beloved.
cute.
It's got the pants, it's sweatpants. They're amazing. I wear them like every single day. They're the best sweatpants you will ever
My
own.
beloved.
I'm being serious. Orchid8.com, link in the description. I will see you next time for Alan Wake 2.
Woo!
Oh boy.
Come on. Obviously you're a skater.
I will also see you next time for Alan Wake 2. Honestly, like this video, I did want to finish it. In the moment when I was watching it the other day. It was just time-wise. I just didn't have time. I had to like get something else out there so I could film something else. So I would actually have a couple of things to put out this week. So I'm so that I was invested enough though that I wanted to keep going. I didn't want to stop. So that's where I was at last time. That I'm glad that I'm finished. Again, next time is Alan Wake 2. That video, his video is 1 hour and 5 minutes long. So again, if you want me to watch that all in one, I will watch it all in one. And my video will be like 1 hour and a half, 1 hour and 45 minutes, probably somewhere in that range. So if that's what you want, that's what I'll do. If you want me to cut it up like I did for this one and just have it a little bit more bite-sized, I can do that as well. And thank you for telling me to make sure I got this one done before Alan Wake 2. I really appreciate that. Also, I do plan on taking a peek at that Gods of Asgard song, just because I've done a lot of other music reactions on the Americans Learns channel, and it's a thing I have fun doing. Also, that is related to this. That's really cool. So I'll be doing that as well at some point, probably before Alan Wake 2. I'll do the Gods of Asgard song. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.